Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of this three-part IT Ops Times live micro-webinar series on artificial intelligence and its impact on network engineering and operations. Brought to you, of course, by network observability company Kentik. I'm Dave Rubenstein, editor-in-chief of IT Ops Times, and in this episode, we'll get some advice on the essential features and considerations for integrating AI into your network engineering and operations roadmap. If you missed episode 1, you can catch up by watching it on the IT Ops Times website in the Learning Center under the Webinars tab. In that first talk, we looked at the impact of AI on networks and operations, including understanding the fundamental differences between the conceptual idea of AI and its real-world application. This week, we're joined by Josh Mayfield. He's the Senior Director of Product Marketing at Kentik, who'll dive into a strategic roadmap planning, operational deployment of AI, and a whole lot more. So, Josh, let's get started.
Thank you so much, David. Very excited to be here and talk with you folks very briefly about just what should be the essentials on your AI roadmap. In the first micro webinar, what we talked about were what's the real, what's the fake, what's the reality of the situation when it comes to the real usability of AI, is particularly generative AI in networking and I&O use cases. And today we're going to talk a little bit about what should be on your roadmap. And again, back to that realism of what should really go there, what can actually have an outsized impact, what is achievable, what's genuinely capable, instead of some of the smoke and mirrors sometimes that you can see around this topic. And so today we're just going to hit right through that. First of all is that there can be signals upon signals when it comes to training your models and understanding how you want them to apply what they're learning to the practice of infrastructure and operations, networking, engineering, architecture, and so forth. And then out of that, what should be on our roadmap? What should be the incremental steps and the things that we can continuously build upon to get closer and closer to that realization of having an AI companion in our network operation? And then I would just kind of a call to action is prioritize all of this based on the use cases that are important to you. And we're going to talk through a few of those things, but that's how you get quick wins, where you can have this calibrated AI in a realistic use case and a realistic capability, then applied to something you're doing every day anyway. In doing so, that allows you to really learn as you go and treat your AI like an intern who's coming on board, who doesn't know everything, but they know a little bit of something. They're smart, they're capable, they're ready to learn, but they need to apprentice. They need to see what it's like to be you, to be around you, the use cases that are important to you, in order to leverage that intelligence and apply it to those use cases. So with that in mind, I just want to first lay a little bit of the groundwork, is that there's signals upon signals upon signals when it comes to what we can teach all of these things to do. And also what we need to do to understand all of the different complexities around our networks and try to distill things down into something that's digestible. And that's where we get into those top use cases. What really are the areas and the tasks, the mandates that are put on network engineering, I&O teams when it comes to all the things that could be known or can be known about their networks? And so when you look at all that observability and you look at all these different use cases, compiling it together and then having that intelligence embedded within it to relate and orchestrate all of these various signals into meaning, that's where you start to get things edging along and you start to get that accelerated rate and so forth. And in reality, when it comes to eating the elephant one bite at a time, you start to think about, okay, what should then be on my roadmap to start to realize some of these things, to see AI's assistance in these use cases, to distill everything into a single picture and then make use of it once it's all there. And so, essentials, I'll take you first to the bottom of this slide. Any user can ask any question about any network. That should be that North Star guiding light when it comes to your utilization of AI in your I&O. Can anyone who cares about this ask a question, get an answer about any of this infrastructure and operation? All of these network components, on-prem, internet, edge, and everything in between, from devices to data centers, from apps to clouds, to customers and supply chains. All those various network components do have answers embedded in them. And what AI can do is unlock it. I'm going to tell you about 4. One is just a query assistant. Many times network systems, from an NMS to an observability platform to all manner of different ways that we can examine the data of all those signals, sometimes come with complex query languages. And just becoming an expert in understanding which questions to ask, which key value pairs, can sometimes be a bit of a challenge. That's number one. Number two is being able to string that together in a prompt book, being able to take not just one query, but a string of them together that have logical coherence and also repeatability. Being able to do the same sort of troubleshooting with that same companion who's learning as they go right alongside you in a strung together prompt book sort of way. Number three is starting to give you some insight, being able to leapfrog over certain dead ends and false paths to get to the possible root cause based on all of that learning that things are happening. And then finally, if you can get to the point on your roadmap where we're starting to get recommendations on remediation, on mitigation, on resolution, then we're really starting to change the game. And all of these things can happen. And they're all starting with just a single thing. What can I get an AI to do that is a difficult task, something like writing a query? So let's start there. You can use natural language in your roadmap and thinking about how am I going to use AI within my INO, within my network operation. First is, can it write queries for me? Can I just use natural language to say, why are my packets dropping in my Azure East data center? When I want to look at and understand the health or the CPU utilization on a particular device, I want to understand its temperature, any number of different things. I want to understand what's the cloud-to-cloud traffic and the inefficiencies related to between AWS and GCP. These are questions that, just as I've been talking, you can ask. And being able to do that to an assistant to then generate the query of that system that you're using, which oftentimes is complex, it's SQL, or any other number of different programming languages. Whenever we get into those databases, they can become quite complex. And you have to know ahead of time what your key value pairs are. But if you have this on your roadmap, you can get meaning out of your network telemetry and all that data. You can get versatility, much more ease, and much more accelerated analysis. And then, as I was mentioning earlier, you can adapt a lot quicker. And if you don't have an experienced team or you have a lot of versatility and you're trying to cover this broadening and changing composition in your infrastructure, being able to quickly get to answers when you don't already know what the variables are is exactly what a query assistant can do. And that's the first, I would suggest, the first thing you should consider on your roadmap when you're implementing AI. The second one is start to string that together into prompt books, being able to do the next step and the next step and the next step in your troubleshooting, but then codifying that within a prompt book, a journey that you took, and being able to then apply that to future situations where the exact same flow, the exact same model is followed, even if the variables are different coming in. And that allows you to have very specific types of troubleshooting lanes and the ability to share and repeat. Not everybody has to be the expert that you are. And in so doing, working with the prompt books, working with the troubleshooting in that way, you start to disseminate that knowledge more broadly in the organization, up and down. Anybody that cares about the network's performance, everybody that cares about the infrastructure and operation can now start to do the same things that the experts can do when it comes to these strings of prompts and troubleshooting operations that now can be applied to everyone. Third, as I was mentioning, starting to get into suggestions and insights. Once we can write a query right away, and then secondly, being able to string those together and share them in such a way that we can start to do repeatable work in a much more rapid way with much more consistency. Now we can get into a point where I want the AIs to start giving me an insight. Tell me what paths I shouldn't go down, they're dead ends, and instead surface up to me the most meaningful possible root cause analysis. That way I can get to the answers quicker. And it's learning all this as we go, as we implement things like query assistance, as we implement things like prompt books and troubleshooting through a journey. It then naturally leads to an opportunity for the model to learn and to train itself in how you think, how you behave, what kinds of questions you're asking when you're doing an RCA. So as you're doing that root cause analysis, it's learning from you what you tend to look at, what you tend to like. And soon it starts bringing you an insight of something you didn't ask for. But because you've done things in the past, it's saying, okay, I don't think this path is going to work for us again. Let's go here. Being able to provide a certain potential root cause is a real step up to now get into an analytic, not just generating text or generating queries, but actually coming with an insight that's unique. And then finally, being able to take action on it. As you're looking at your roadmap and what you want to implement and using AI in these ways within INO, that final achievable stage of stage 4 is now start to do some remediation. So anything that you're planning out there through learning, through user interactions, it should be able to recommend certain resolutions, remediations, mitigation steps, a recipe for closing any sort of exposure or gap or trouble area, and doing so with the current context that it has, but applying what the LLM knows. And many times what the LLM knows is how to write code. And so by being able to have an AI generated code snippet directly from the system that has all of that context that it's learned along the way, enables you to have fewer mistakes, to have fewer fat-fingered errors of a human user, and an airtight AI that can generate that snippet because it understands your context and it has the skills built into it via its LLM nature. By reducing all of that, reducing the challenge of what to do when needing to remediate, the challenge of not being able to have scale across, and sometimes getting to a point where you're trying to have this AI everywhere. Sometimes it behooves everyone to just pause for a minute and just think about just these 4 things. Can it help me write queries? Can it help me string them together? Can it learn from that to start providing some potential root cause analysis? And then finally, from all of that, can it start to recommend and potentially even code for me remediations? And if you just follow those little discrete steps, one after the other, you'll start to find that AI is working for you in a network and INO context. We don't have to shoot for the moon. We don't have to blow up everything and reverse all that we've done. We just need a little assistance here and a little bit more here. And as we build that up more and more and start to interact with these AIs in an INO context, we get better at it. And they become, the never tired, very equipped, always on, context aware intern that's right there with you as a companion, getting the job done. And doing so by learning from you in your context and in your typical workflow. And then finally, I mentioned this too. When you're thinking about where to deploy, what to learn, what to train, it's really important to understand your own taxonomy. What kinds of telemetry am I working with? What kinds of networks? What kind of outputs am I looking for in connectivity and integration? And then in the red there, what use cases am I talking about here? It can vary. Lots of different organizations have entirely different infrastructure, have entirely different network operations, and the demands on them. The experience economy is a weird duck where all kinds of organizations are doing all kinds of network dependent things across their organization. And so you need to find out what are my use cases, and then start to prioritize from that list and say, okay, of this, what are the queries, troubleshooting prompt books, RCA, and potential remediation that I want to see happen? Next use case. And then following that same, how can I get better at query assistance? How can I get better at prompt books? How can I get better at RCA and remediation? And just keep ticking through there. And what you'll find is a snowball effect. You'll get that first one down, all those 4 aspects, onto the next, learn as we go, onto the next. And this iterate and adapt continues to become a virtuous circle that ultimately gets you where you want to go on your roadmap. It's realistic, it's achievable, and it actually has an impact in organizations. So you don't have to go for a moonshot. You just have to start small and just work your way up. And those are 4 steps that I would encourage anyone to use. And I want to thank you for your time to go through all of this. And don't forget to look through the lens of your use cases to know what's important.
Hey, Josh, thanks for that excellent look at building an AI roadmap and which AI components offer the biggest bang for the buck. Really appreciate your time here today.
Thanks for having me.
Okay. Also like to thank Kentik for sponsoring the series, as well as our loyal viewers who tune in and watch each session. And I urge you to join us next time in the final episode when we'll be discussing data integrity in the era of artificial intelligence. So until next time, once again, I'm Dave Rubenstein, Editor-in-Chief of IT Ops Times. So long for now.
Thank you.